Views are responsible for rendering data and dynamically generating HTML in the browser. Now that includes things like iterating through collections, showing and hiding things, DOM manipulations, and actually quite a bit more. Really anything that's specific to the UI. Well, things like business rules, calculations, gathering data from the server, and more shouldn't be put into views because that would break the separation of concerns. In other words, we want to break that out, make it more testable and easy to work with and maintain. So in this module, we're going to talk about controllers and scope. We're also going to talk again and review a little bit about modules. We saw that a little bit earlier. And talk about what a module is and the role it plays as a container for controllers. Now I mentioned something called scope, and you're going to see that scope is really important in AngularJS applications. It allows something called data binding. Now you might have worked with data binding before, but if you haven't, we'll clarify what that is and the benefits that it offers. So let's go ahead and jump right in.
So we're going to start off by talking about some of the architecture patterns that AngularJS uses out of the box. And this will include things like Model View Controller, MVC, or you might hear MV Star, because it really uses some other type of patterns out there like Model View View Model, if you've ever heard of that, or MVVM. And it kind of merges multiple types of patterns and makes those available to you as a developer. So we'll discuss those and what they are and what they mean. From there, we're going to talk about controllers. We'll talk about a simple way to get started with them and how we can integrate scope into our controllers for our data binding for the data that goes into the views. Next, we'll talk about how to actually hook up a controller to a view because the view won't just magically know to call the JavaScript for the controller. So we'll talk about how to marry those two up so that when the view loads, it knows how to get the data from the controller and then perform the data binding to the directives. Next, we're going to talk about modules, and earlier at the beginning of the course, we briefly took a look at these, but modules are containers, and we can put things like controllers into these containers, so we'll see how to do that. And that'll be the final piece of adding a controller to a module. What's the code look like there, and how do we do it? Now, from the big picture standpoint, we're going to focus on, again, modules and controllers and scope here. So we'll kind of get rid of all that. We've already talked about views and directives. So we'll see how scope can be used in a controller, and then at the end of this, how a controller can be placed in a module. So let's go ahead and get started, though, by talking about some of the architecture patterns in AngularJS.